From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. Once again, we begin a week with violence in a distant land. Today, 3 more Palestinians have died after being shot by Israelis. 5 weeks after these Palestinian demonstrations against their occupiers began, 5 weeks after, the Israeli defense minister said it wouldn't last. It goes on, and it is just as intense, if not more so. Today, for the first time in this bitter cycle of violence, one of the Palestinians was killed by an Israeli civilian. In the occupied territories, ABC's Dean Reynolds.
The violent Palestinian protest and the tough Israeli tactics used to stop it have taken on a raw, chaotic appearance, almost like the Wild West. These are army reservists and prison guards escorting a busload of fellow Israelis out of hostile territory in Gaza City this afternoon. Firing repeatedly with submachine guns, they cut their way past rock-throwing youths, harassing them from afar. As the shooting continued, an Israeli television crew was told to stop filming or they'd be shot. Moments later, a shot was fired toward the ABC News cameraman recording this scene. It did no harm. Israeli forces are permitted to shoot live ammunition in life-threatening situations. Later, a Palestinian wounded in another confrontation was dragged by soldiers to an ambulance. The army said he had a bullet wound in the stomach. Palestinians were even attacking Palestinians today, punishing workers for going to jobs in Israel. Elsewhere, makeshift roadblocks, protest fires, and more stones face the Israeli military that's been rolling into the city in ever larger numbers.
The army presence here in Gaza has doubled and then tripled, but instead of suppressing the trouble, the problem appears to be intensifying.
On the West Bank, there were a number of rock-throwing episodes. It was after one near Ramallah that a Jewish settler shot and killed a 16-year-old Palestinian who'd stoned his car. An inquiry is underway. 5 weeks into this conflict, the initial Israeli confidence has receded. And officials now say there may be no quick way out.
It might take longer than we want.
So long that some military experts envision weeks or even months before the turmoil and the international criticism of Israel is brought to a halt. Dean Reynolds, ABC News in the Israeli-occupied Gaza Strip.
If you look at these demonstrations and confrontations from thousands of miles away, they seem to be made up at times of faceless Palestinians opposed by equally faceless Israeli soldiers. In an effort to add a more personal dimension to this, our chief foreign correspondent, Pierre Salinger, spent some time over the weekend with one Palestinian family to try to find out how it feels about the way they live.
The Dheisheh refugee camp is just outside Bethlehem. Some 9,000 Palestinians are in the camp. The Odeh family lives here. Ezat and Zora met 30 years ago. They had separately fled their villages between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem after the 48 war. They moved into these tents.
We lived in these tents. That's where I've met him. I used to carry the water on my head.
Now they have 8 children, 7 sons and a daughter. It is Saturday morning. Ezat, several of the sons and a friend are working on expanding the home. Ezat showed me his work permit, which must be renewed every 3 months. He is part of a construction team in Jerusalem, where he works for an Israeli firm. He earns about $17 a day and pays about a third of that to the Israeli government in taxes.
That's not enough money to take care of 10 people. That's why one of my sons is also working.
Zora is in the little shop the Odeys opened 3 months ago to sell basic food items, all manufactured in Israel. In a day, she says, she sells about 10 Israeli shekels, $7 worth of goods. 2 of the sons, Sammy, 17 and a half, and Imad, 19, showed me the view from the roof. They also told me the story of their arrests in December of 1986.
Around midnight, the soldiers surrounded the house. 2 soldiers knocked at the door. They looked at the ID card. They were looking for me. They accused me of throwing stones and participating in a demo.
Sammy spent 6 months in prison. Imad was arrested too on the same charges. He spent 35 days in jail. He is worried the soldiers will show up at night again.
For 3 months now, I don't sleep in the house.
Both boys deny they participated in demonstrations. Even if they had, they would not have any interest in admitting it publicly. and Sammy supports the current confrontation.
They're excellent demonstrations. It's a chance to express yourself.
We were just about finished visiting the family when a demonstration broke out at the other end of the camp. Young Palestinians were hurling rocks, and the Israeli soldiers were shooting rubber bullets. When we came out of the camp, an Israeli military officer blamed us for instigating the riot, even though it took place far from where we were filming. Quiet returned to the camp, and the ROSY family sat down for a simple lunch. On Sunday morning, Ezad O'Day left at dawn for his job in Jerusalem. It is an irony that while this violent confrontation is going on between Palestinians and Israelis, there are Palestinians who cannot survive without working for Israeli companies, and there are Israeli companies that cannot function without Palestinian workers. Dara Salinger, ABC News, in the Israeli-occupied West Bank.
One other Middle East-related story, a West German woman was arrested overnight in connection with the bombing of a discotheque in West Berlin 2 years ago, in which 2 American servicemen were killed. Officials say that Christine Endrakite carried the explosives into the La Belle discotheque on behalf of 2 convicted Palestinian terrorists, allegedly under orders from Syria. The United States, you may remember, blamed Libya for the bombing and retaliated with a bombing raid on the Libyan capital 10 days later. Today, the Secretary of State, George Shultz, said he still believes that Libya was behind the bombing. Several stories this evening from the Soviet Union. The Soviets announced today they will attend this summer's Olympic Games in South Korea. That appears to eliminate the possibility of a Soviet boycott of the Games, though late today the North Koreans said they would boycott the Games, they would not go. Still with the Soviet Union, the Communist Party newspaper Pravda predicted today that Soviet troops could start pulling out of Afghanistan on May Day of this year. That is May the 1st, if the U.S. and Pakistan reach agreement to stop supplying the Afghan rebels, and that is the usual condition. And the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev called today for the first meeting in 29 years with China. He did so in an interview with a Chinese newspaper. Later in this broadcast, President Reagan says if there's a recession, it may be the media's fault. We'll begin a series of reports on what to look for in this presidential election year and the plight of a Haitian mother and her brand new American baby.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you